Okay, and we're going to reconvene now for our first round of lightning talks. Again, my name is Charlene Martoni, and I'd like to introduce you to Tamika Barnes. Tamika is the department head for Perimeter College Library Services here at Georgia State University. She is also Associate Dean at Perimeter College. Take it away, Tamika.
Thank you, Shirley. Welcome back, everyone, or welcome if you're just joining us. And we're going to begin with our lightning talks. We have 3 that we are going to be going through in this next hour. So just remember to have yourself muted. And then also, as we're going through the lightning talks, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. And we have somebody who is moderating that and will ask the questions for you. So let's begin with our first speaker, which is Dr. John Mack from Georgia State University. Dr. Mack is a graduate of the University of Kansas and has a master's degree in Russian history and a PhD in American history. He has been teaching as an online lecturer in history at Georgia State University Perimeter College since 2010. And so now Dr. Mack will be presenting on teaching with OER, successes and challenges. Dr. Mack, I'm turning it over to you.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
All right, sorry. Can you see my screen? That's the most important thing.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. All right, excellent. Thank you so much. I know I have 10 minutes, so I'm keeping my eye on the clock. Just want to talk to you a little bit about teaching with OR and my own experience. So my personal story is I've been teaching a long time, and I've noted, as I think one of the presenters already talked about, the fact that college textbook prices just keep going up and up and up. And I got into OER just because I was so frustrated by students who were, we're in the 4th week of the semester. There's already been several assignments that required them to use a textbook, and they came and said, well, I haven't, been able to afford the textbook yet. Either my financial aid hasn't come in yet, or, I've had a couple expenses, etc. And then I would end up with, a number of students that were having to always play catch up because they had fallen behind so significantly from the beginning, or they ended up, doing poorly in the class and told me at the end of the class that they hadn't been able to afford the textbook and they were trying to Google answers and Google information, etc. And of course, that just was very frustrating for me, but also as I got to know these students, then, it became very concerning to me that the cost of textbooks was keeping students from being able to be successful in courses. I also had an adult son who went back to school as an adult, and I witnessed him trying to purchase textbooks and, was just overwhelmed by the price of textbooks. Someone mentioned a textbook that cost almost $500, and he had one of those. So those are some personal sort of motivational factors for me. And also then I faced the challenge when I got into developing perspective courses of really ending up teaching courses for which I couldn't find a textbook, or for which maybe one of the textbooks that I would use only, 50 to 60% of the chapters would apply to that course. So those are some of the reasons why I became interested in OER and started to learn about it. So when I got into OER, been doing this for a number of years, there are several decisions that I had to make. And of course, where am I going to find these textbooks? One of the options was to write from scratch, to just start out with nothing other than what I've already developed and written in the past, and then write a textbook that way. The other, of course, is to edit or adapt already existing OER materials. Once you get into, especially now, looking at OER materials. There are a lot of OER materials out there. And so then, one of your choices is to take some of those and then adapt them or edit them to meet the needs of your course. I've done that with the U.S. history textbook. The Georgia State Perimeter College, we teach a 1 semester U.S. history course. Almost everywhere else in the country, they teach 2 semester U.S. history courses. So all of the textbooks that are out there, even the OER textbooks, are written with the assumptions that students will have 2 semesters to complete the readings. And so that was just really difficult for me in teaching. I either ended up, assigning double the amount of reading, 2,000 pages or something like that, for students to read in a semester, which of course was completely unrealistic, even using OER materials, or, pulled that very frustrating. Start at the bottom of page 3 and then read through to the top of page 9 and then pick up again, and and students became confused, etc. So then I took the OpenStax US history textbook and started by editing it down so that instead of a 2 semester course, it now is a textbook for a 1 semester course, and then gradually over time have been able to edit it, to add my own materials, to depending on what we're focusing on, adapt it. So that is another option that is available to you. And then the third option, which is what I'm going to talk about here, and that is to utilize ebooks available through our library system. Well, I teach the PERS Perspectives course here at GSUPC. I teach one on Russian culture. And I also then will be teaching one that's been approved on Native American history and culture. And what I've decided to do, because there's really no textbook out there, either paid or OER, that are focused in the way that I would like them to be focused, then what I've decided to do for both of these courses is to utilize ebooks that are available through our library system, and then to have students read either the total book, for instance, or to read a chapter or two out of a number of books. So, for instance, in Russian culture, we have a section, I've got a section in there on Russian history. There's a nice short scholarly ebook on Russian history that they read the total book. But then when it comes to aspects of Russian culture, we read 1 or 2 chapters out of several books dealing with either religion or language or geography or whatever it is. So the sort of the nice things about that is that then, and I'll go to this slide here, the challenges for that, of course, are finding the right books. So you end up, and I do each semester, spending a great deal of time, reading through books, seeing what new books are out there, looking at several journals that have book reviews to find out, which are the new books that have been written. And then you have to, once you find the right book, then you have to go into the library system, make sure that the ebook is available, make sure that there is unlimited usage to the ebooks that you choose, so that then, I made the mistake once of assigning a book for which, I think the library had 2 or 3, that people could only 2 or 3 people could read it at a time. And of course, all of my students waited till Saturday to read the book, and only 2 or 3 of them could read that book. So you do have to check up front to make sure that there is that unlimited usage. You also have to check every semester. I'm sure the librarian could explain it better than me, but textbook publishers can roll books out and make them available as ebooks. And then in my experience, sometimes they roll them back. So a book that may have been available as an ebook last semester is not available as an ebook this semester. So you need to make sure that you are looking carefully. You also need to make sure that you have established a relationship with the online librarian, because very often you can communicate with them. They can help you find books that have limited usage, I always like to make sure by checking, even if I think it's unlimited, I want to check with one of those librarians to make sure that that's true, that I haven't misread the data. So that is a challenge. And obviously, this means that then you have to be adaptable as you teach because, for instance, a book that I used for my perspectives course last semester, spring of 23, it's not available in the spring of 24. So I couldn't just roll over the course and teach it exactly as I taught it before. Now, from my perspective, that's a good thing because it keeps me, active and engaged. I try to make new courses, even if I've taught the U.S. history course for I can't even count the number of years. I try to always go through it to assess what worked, what didn't work, and to make sure that it's fresh. I do that in some respects for integrity purposes. It's very difficult for students to cheat in my courses because they're always new in that respect. There's always at least a few assignments that I haven't assigned before. And it keeps me fresh, but it does mean that, I have to write my own quizzes. I can't use textbook quizzes because OER, OpenStax has some of those assessments for you. When you're using ebooks, you have to develop your own assessments. So that's additional work. And of course, then it's a learning process for students. Because the students have to become comfortable with going to the library website, with signing in, with using the ebook. Now, I have not found that to be a significantly difficult process for students. But there are a few students who every semester say, I don't know how to access the book. And then, I am able then to walk them through that. But that is another challenge that you do have to follow. Then in terms of opportunities, I've shared this already, but I would say using ebooks has made me a better teacher. It's also forced me to stay current. I love to do that. I like to read. We all do. That's why we're educators. But we all know that from time to time we fall behind because of all of the other obligations we have. But using ebooks makes me, as I mentioned already, go and read book reviews, etc. And so it has made me a better teacher because it's forced me to be consistently learning. It's forced me to engage new books, new ideas to stay current. Certainly has helped me connect better with students. In the U.S. history course, for instance, we calculated, there's 4 of us you've been using OER textbooks. We've calculated that we have saved the students over the last 4 years over $200,000, which then, in my experience, means the students are much more thankful and engaged. I've already said it's forced me to stay current and up to date. And then lastly, has helped hundreds of students in terms of just enabling them. I don't want to put anything in the way. It's already hard enough for most of our students to pay their school bill. It's hard enough for most of them to find the time. They're working jobs. I want to make sure that I'm not doing anything that adds to their burden. And if I can lighten their burden, then I think I have done them a service, and I know they're thankful for it. So I think that's my 10 minutes. So there you go.
Thank you. And now we'll have Q&A.
So I see one question in the chat from Nicole Baker. I'm interested in your thoughts on faculty members who don't want to spend the time or don't have the time to spend to do all of this work despite the benefits of using OER.
I mean, I can't comment on those who don't want to do the work. Those who don't have the time to do the work are probably not going to be able to use ebooks because it does. I mean, there are OER textbooks that can be used, but using ebooks does require an investment of time. And I would say you just have to make that, algorithmic calculation in terms of your own time and your own ability to work on those things. Because I'm not gonna, I mean, it does require time. The setup time is greater when you're using ebooks, especially if you're using new ebooks. But for some courses, at least in my experience, it's the best way to do it.
Let's see something. Where's the?
There's a question in the chat from Charlene. John, do you have any tips for selecting / evaluating ebooks for your course?
I think I mentioned this already. I always, I mean, and we teach our students to do this as well. I mean, obviously you want them to be academic books, but you also want them to be readable. I made that mistake in one course where I assigned a book and I hadn't read it as carefully. I read it as me, not as a student, and I realized, 2 weeks into the semester that the students, it was way over the students' heads, and I had to recalculate, et cetera. So some of it is just that approach, just taking, okay, if I was a student who didn't know what the meaning of these terms were, would this book be accessible? But I also want to make sure it's scholarly, and that's where I go and I read academic book reviews. And our, library website is great. It gives you links to all of those academic book reviews for any of the books. And I try to make sure I, choose books that have received positive academic book reviews, so I feel pretty confident. So.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mack, for that great presentation. I don't see that there's any more questions, so we appreciate your time in providing your
I want to say
insight.
one more thing.
Sure.
Okay, just say one more thing and then I promise I'm done. I just can't say enough about how helpful our library is and the staff who work there. They just, somebody said, how do you make it? If you work with a librarian, choosing ebooks is so much easier than trying to do it yourself. So that's all. Just a plug for them because they've just been of inestimable help.
We appreciate the shout out. Thanks again.